Hi there, this is Laurence from Laurence Films, and welcome to another random review. And this is very happy news because finally Sleuth is on Bluray from 1972. This is the French Bluray, but obviously it plays in English, or La Lumiere. This is one of my favourite films of all time, even though I don't think it made the top 250, but I've got a lot of favourite films of all time. It's so great to have it on Blu-ray in nice sharp definition. This also comes with a booklet, which is half French and half English. And again, it's just so good to see it in high definition. This is directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, his last film. Script written by Anthony Schaeffer, based on his own play. It's a two-hander starring Sir Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine, remade with Michael Caine and Jude Law, Michael Caine playing the Olivier character. I've never seen the remake. I have no intention of seeing the remake because the original is just about perfect. If you're a fan of very wordy films and plays, if you're a fan of Mamet, obviously without the swearing, you should adore Sleuth. Obviously Mankiewicz made lots of films, from The Big Expensive Cleopatra to a version of Julius Caesar with Brando, Dragonwyck with Vincent Price, All About Eve, Barefoot Contessa, Suddenly Last Summer and Dragonwyck are both on Indicator, just out of interest. Ghost and Mrs. Muir and lots of other films. But this is probably my favourite of his films because, like most plays about England, it's really about class, and it's fascinating with the two actors because, again, you could argue they are from different classes, they're different acting classes. It's the old guard, obviously, with Olivier, and the new breed with Michael Caine from the Ipcress File and Alfie, and that kind of whole class, if you like, of British actor that was coming up at the same time, with Peter O'Toole, even though he's probably more in the Olivier kind of class, but Alan Bates and Albert Finney, who were actually kind of in the running for the Milo Tyndall character that Michael Caine plays. That ridiculous class that all came up at the same time of British actor, that generational Richard Harris, and Richard Harris might be a little bit older, I'm not quite sure. But there's a whole raft of them, of like all-timers. And the enjoyment from this film is just seeing two kind of legends of the game going at it. I've never been a huge Michael Caine fan. I'm certainly in the films that he's engaged in, and he's not just doing for the money. Jaws the Revenge. He is fantastic, and he kind of had to be fantastic in this film. Obviously the stories about Olivier and Caine on set, that obviously Caine had to kind of, was strangely enough intimidated, and kind of had to show Olivier that he could hang with him. But they did get on very well once that rapport was met in the mutual respect. Again, it's a two-hander, it's over 2 hours, but it's absolutely riveting because constantly they're just having barbs at each other, So the setup is Larry Olivier is a well-renowned author of St. John Lord Merridew, his detective, who all his cases are up in the upper class and the gentry. And, he says at one point that even, common people like my books. So he's very much a classicist, if that's a word, a classist. And Milo Tyndall, ex Tindallini, Michael Caine's character, son of an Italian immigrant. He is a hairdresser, has a couple of salons, which obviously Olivier looks down his nose at him, but Michael Caine's character wants to take Olivier's wife off his hands. And Olivier is a bit of a fan of games, particularly fairly sadistic ones. So they have a kind of battle of wits. He gets down to the nitty gritty with Caine and asks, can you afford to keep my wife into the kind of lifestyle she's worth living in? And as Caine he's making money, but not that much money, Olivier comes up with this plan that Milo steals 250 grand's worth of jewellery, makes it look like a robbery. Andrew Wyke, Olivier's character, will still get the insurance, so it all kind of benefits both. But then the supposed robbery turns into something more sinister, and it's kind of the first act of the play and the first act of the film, and then in the second act a policeman turns up to find out exactly what went on, and the film proceeds to its third act finale. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail if there's anybody that hasn't seen it, but really everybody should have seen it, even though it's hardly been available, and it's never really on television. I mean, I saw it first on television probably back in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, but it's not a film that's ever really on that often, which is a shame because it's absolutely wonderful. Of course, there is a huge conceit and a leap of faith you have to take in the second act, which would definitely work better in the theatre than it does on screen, but you just have to go with it and then see where it goes, and that leads into the third act. Again, both actors, certainly Olivier, you could argue at times is nibbling a little bit of the scenery, but that's what his character is. Obviously this guy loves himself, loves his creation of this detective, and of course the humour in it is, when Michael Caine doesn't even know who his detective is, and of course he's like, Olivier's appalled. And again, they're just having so many little barbs together. There's so many wonderful one-liners, as they're really two men who dislike each other, but again, they're still trying to keep some element of a stiff upper lip. But Olivier can't really hide his disdain when Milo talks about, his dad, who was a watchmaker, trying to make the family more English, and of course Olivier's just like, what? How, you can't make yourself more English, It's just an absolute blast and an absolute joy, and it does get the audience going, depending on kind of what part of it is a game, what part of it is reality. They both get to show off their range. Caine has a couple of wonderful scenes of shouting, and Olivier has the whole range. They both get to do some accents, and it's an actor's dream. It's a script that every actor would be lined round the block to do. I'm actually surprised it hasn't been remade again, but I don't think the remake did that well. Again, I'm sure the remake was about an hour and a half, whereas the original's 2.5 hours. Not 2.5 hours, but 2 hours 10 minutes. It's actually a wee bit longer than that, I think. But I'm surprised it hasn't actually been rebooted. Maybe not as a female two-hander. But it's an absolute joy, and as I said, finally getting it in Blu-ray. It was one of those films that I've done videos in the past of films that need a Blu-ray, if there's such a thing as a film that needs a Blu-ray. So it's good to strike this one off the list as well. But again, as I say, it's a French Blu-ray. All you get is a trailer, but it doesn't matter, because to actually see the film looking the best that it's ever looked, and again, you get to see all of Olivier's little toys and little devices that he keeps, because it's a man who lives in this fantasy world of his detective and his crime, and is just so egotistical and loves puzzles and games. It's just an absolute pleasure. I'm sure other people could give more in-depth reviews. Again, I'm not going to go into all the spoilers, but this is more just an advertisement that it's actually finally on Blu-ray after all these years. Who knows whether somebody else will release it in Blu-ray, but it's great to see it in all its colour glory. So that's that. If you want a decent copy of Sleuth, I suggest you pick it up, because it's wonderful. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you've seen Sleuth and what you think of it, and hopefully join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell.